So thank you again for joining our session this afternoon. This is our 14th Open Office Hour series. And today the topic is NetSuite Planning and Budgeting. Joining me today for this session is Kevin von Derek von Hartman, I apologize. He's a NetSuite Planning and Budget expert. I'll let him introduce himself in the next slide, and he'll do the entire presentation. And at the end of the presentation, we'll open it up for Q&A. We received some of your questions already in the registration form. We appreciate that. And if there are any other questions, please feel free to use the Q&A session. So with that said, Derek, please take it away.
Okay, thank you, Alejandro. Yeah, so thank you for joining. What we are going to be talking about today is NetSuite Planning and Budgeting, which is a companion solution to NetSuite Financials, but is also a really premier budgeting and forecasting solution that is sold on its own, and it has a very strong position in the marketplace. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go here. Just to start off with a safe harbor statement, this basically says that any comments that we make about future direction are not considered a commitment on our part here. But the important thing I like to point out is what we will be showing you today is all generally available, released, and deliverable software and functionality. So there's really nothing that will fall underneath that. In terms of a little bit about myself here, I've been with NetSuite for several years here, and specifically supporting our partners such as Crowe around their customers' interest for improving their financial planning and analysis processes, the planning and budgeting solutions there. Kind of a specialist in that area. I've been doing this for longer than I care to admit, several decades anyways. Prior to joining NetSuite was with another company that some of you may be familiar with, Adaptive Insights, where I ran the territory in Southern California, which is where I'm based for them for quite a number of years. Going back before that was involved with some of the other larger vendors in the space, notably Hyperion and the Hyperion planning solution and S-Space, which you'll see in a moment has a significant sort of impact in terms of what we're offering you today. Before that, actually was a budget manager myself in the aerospace industry, helped to manage about $500 million in budgets on the GPS satellite program. So I definitely walk the walk that many of you do, and know the pains of having to pull data together and make some sense of it and report it in a convincing way to your senior management. So hopefully this can help me relate to you a little bit today. What we'll be going through is a pretty simple agenda. I'm going to set the stage by talking about the current state of the financial planning processes today, and then we'll switch to the benefits that having a purpose-built application can bring to your processes here. And then we'll wrap up by spending probably the majority of our time here in the actual demonstration of NetSuite Planning and Budgeting itself, leaving some time at the end for Q&A. Okay, so we'll just move forward with that. In terms of what we hear from our customers and what we know is that budgeting, among other financial processes, really stands on its own. It is not part of the GL accounting process, and in fact really is kind of siloed, and because of that has often existed in terms of being built in spreadsheets and managed that way. And I know that a lot of you are using spreadsheets today to do your financial planning. And really the problems with that is that we start off by taking last year's templates, if you will, the spreadsheet files, and really trying to bring them forward by updating them with the new business rules, new customers, new products, bringing actuals in from last year, trying to line these up. It really becomes a big save as exercise. It's a time-consuming process, lots of manual keying, and is inherently exposing a lot of opportunity for risks to you here, and we'll talk more about that. So the goal is to really automate as much of the process as possible, get the mechanical work out of this, okay, and provide additional pre-built functionality that not only takes you from the preparation stage, but through the planning process that gives you some tools and levers to work with here that helps you to plan better and more accurately in terms of what the potential future outcomes are for your organization. So we're looking to reduce the time it takes to produce a budget and make it easy enough that you can move this beyond the walls, if you will, of the finance professionals and really incorporate stakeholders across the organization, the actual budget stakeholders themselves here. So it's easy enough for non-finance users, and yet can still be managed by the core finance team within the organization without becoming systems administrators themselves. Okay. It is pre-built with synchronization to the NetSuite General Ledger to bring your actuals over on a periodic basis as often as you need to. I'm going to point out, though, that I'll reference it frequently in this conversation about being connected to the NetSuite financials or General Ledger, but it is a product that stands on its own, and we do have customers who are using this with other non-NetSuite General Ledger and accounting solutions. Okay, so it does not require the NetSuite financials to be used, and in fact, the majority of customers, when you look at the larger picture, are using this on its own with all sorts of other general ledgers, everything from QuickBooks on up to SAP and you know, Oracle, EBS, and so on there. Okay, so what is it that you know, presents the challenges here? What is it that we're looking to really eliminate? If you are working with spreadsheets, you probably know a fair amount of this, but research has shown us that as much as 3/4 of the time you spend in the budgeting process is really just spent cutting, copying, and pasting data from one source into spreadsheets, managing the formulas and such that roll this up here. Ventana and some studies that they did determined that the majority of these spreadsheets can contain material errors that can affect the outcomes and the business decisions that are made on the information that's reporting. So it is important. And yet, the majority of us are still running spreadsheets. Like I say, I've been in this business for over 20 years, and 20 years ago, I at one point had a perception that we had saturated the market, but I've continually been surprised, much to my pleasure here, that there are ever new businesses who are needing this. So if you're running spreadsheets today, you're not alone in this. And again, the solutions are more relevant than ever in this space. So let's take a look at what the world looks like, you know, things that you're probably living today, doing today yourselves here. If you're budgeting in spreadsheets, typically you start off by digging up the templates from the past cycle, whether it was last year's budget, last quarter's, or last month's reporting cycle, and updating them for time periods and anything else that makes that is moved forward in terms of the reporting process. Then you bring your data out of your source systems. Classically, we're talking about your actuals for your general ledger, but it can also be HR data, sales forecast information from a CRM. Many different sources can support the planning process here. And then you kind of put this together and manually manipulate it so that it's in a form that it can line up and fit into the budgeting process. And then you have to cut and paste this information into your templates here and get these templates ready to distribute out to the different functions that are going to be participating, whether it's sales or HR or warehousing or manufacturing, okay? And you need to divide the data up. So at each point there is, as you can see, these little red boxes, an opportunity for mistakes to be made, or even worse, for sensitive data to be sent to the wrong recipients there. Perhaps payroll data gets sent to a different department or someplace where you really don't want it to end up. So again, a lot of checking needs to go into place, and even with that, you're going to have errors. So at this point, we can begin the budgeting process. And so the budget inputs will happen in spreadsheets. Some of your users will be comfortable with spreadsheets, some maybe not so much. Some will be pretty adept, and they'll find clever ways to modify those spreadsheets in ways that you didn't intend. And so the net of that is kind of this you know, ball of yarn here that is the collection of templates and input requests that you've sent out and then brought back together that have to be mashed together into your final budget. You have lots of version control issues. You may think you're done, and then as soon as you press the save button, somebody communicates to you that they sent you the wrong version, or they've got an update, or perhaps at a company level, you've got changes in corporate strategy that have taken place here. So So all challenges to getting to the point where you've got an approved budget or a forecast that everybody agrees is the one you're going to go forward with. But then, of course, as soon as you start moving forward and performing against it, you're going to need to have change exercises. In other words, the what if exercises. You know, what if this change happens in our marketplace? What if this key supplier cost or material cost changes on us? Or what if we move into a new opportunity? And of course, we've all lived through some of the biggest changes that we have witnessed perhaps in our careers in recent months here. And the amount of change planning that has had to go on is just immeasurable here. And perhaps you have experienced some of it yourself. So this is what it looks like. These are the challenges that can take perhaps 10, 15 days to go from month-end actuals to reporting meaningful performance reports for budget against actuals against budget, or actuals to forecast, or create what-if exercises. With a solution in place such as NetSuite Planning and Budgeting, what you will have is a much cleaner process that allows you to focus on the strategic aspects of your budgeting process. The budget templates will roll forward automatically. The actuals integration happens either at the push of a button or at the sort of scheduled lights out process control that you want to have it run. You know, maybe it's every week, every night, every month, whatever you choose. And then from there, it is a matter of gathering inputs and coordinating people where they log into the systems themselves and can see not only their input, but they can also understand what the greater strategy, the greater plan is that they are budgeting to, whether it's growth in sales or managing costs or whatever one is looking to do here. And then, of course, when the need comes through to revise these, whether it's a reforecast or what if exercise, you've got the same business rules, business logic available to you to easily create as many versions as you need to and make them available to those who should see them, but also secure them from those who you don't want to have see those. Okay, so that is the process, that it looks like. You can see it's a much cleaner, simpler process with a proper budgeting and planning system here. So why do companies choose to make this investment here? The number one reasons are really confidence and trust. I'm sure many of you can relate to circumstances in your own organization or others that you've witnessed where numbers were put together, and due to perhaps preventable errors, the wrong numbers were rolled up, put into the briefing decks or management disclosure reports that were sent up to the executive staff here. And of course, errors may be discovered, and in that case, you have to go back into a complete cycle to trace them down and reproduce them. Or perhaps even worse, the C-level recipients of these outputs then present them up to the board of directors or ownership, who, when the issues may surface, could conceivably have confidence issues in the finance function of the organization. So it's really about the confidence and trust that you have, and in turn can extend to your audience, the recipients who are using this reporting information to make decisions this way. It's a common issue, but we can help by making sure that the data integrity is maintained during the planning, reporting, and analysis process. Accuracy is important because you know that the formulas are intact, untouched, and the rules are correctly applied. And of course, speed is an important benefit. Even a reduction of a couple of days in a planning cycle or reporting cycle can make it much more plausible to make corrective actions when you still have the opportunity for the greatest impact with those corrective actions, because you're not as far down the road here. Lastly, I always like to talk about collaboration, with finance being a partner to the business, or trying to be a good partner to the business, being able to involve your stakeholders directly. They get immediate feedback, and they have increased ownership and commitment to performing to the goals of the plan that they themselves have created. They're all big benefits that are important steps towards developing a culture of ownership and involvement that is consistently observed in top performing organizations in every sector. Okay, so looking at the solution as a whole, planning and budgeting, these are the benefits that it brings. We've already talked about the speed and accuracy with which you can bring actuals in, but then also being able to line them up easily with the budgets. Oops, actually went forward on me here. With your budget for quick budget versus actual reporting. Also, things like variance analysis and approvals are built into workflow here. The analysis becomes much more natural because you are feeding real-time dashboards and reports. You'll see some of these in the demonstration. And you also have access to statistical methods such as predictive planning, which allows you to compare your forecasts to prior actuals or other forecasts and use statistical computer models to validate that they're consistent with past results and generate, and they'll give you a probability of actually attaining the result that you're looking at here. So it's not just it's a comprehensive solution for all aspects of the financial planning process, not just the planning, the budgeting, not just reporting, but the entire cycle. So the solution that you're going to see is basically a genetic descendant of the Oracle Hyperion line of planning applications. I mentioned in my introduction that I had spent time with Hyperion in my early days. At that point in time, they introduced the first purpose-built budgeting application to the finance community, and really was what put Hyperion on the board, or on the map, if you will, as an applications vendor for the Office of Finance here. And it has really just grown since then, including having Essbase, a powerful multidimensional analytic database, moved underneath it as the fundamental data store. A big difference in terms of this application compared to any others here. Allows it to scale, not only in terms of data volume, but in terms of functionality in a way that no other application can match here. It has a market presence of, for example, the majority of the Fortune 5000 run Hyperion solutions in their finance operations. But the big change that happened about 6-7 years ago is when it was completely rewritten as a true cloud solution, and in the process made feasible for the rest of us, okay? The companies that are emerging, fast-growing mid-market companies that don't have large IT administrative staff, but instead are a lean finance staff to own and operate here. As I mentioned already, it is designed to work with NetSuite, but this is a solution that is offered on its standalone basis here and can work with any financials that you have got, and includes a very robust integration to a user interface that most of us are very familiar with, and that's Microsoft Office. Excel especially, but also Word and PowerPoint can be used not only just to present reports, but also to interact with the data. You'll see this again in the demonstration. Now, finally, just to wrap up, we'll see what some of the the rest of the world is saying about this product here. This is the Gartner Group's current Magic Quadrant for the financial planning and analysis cloud software category here. And you can see on this that if you are in the upper right space, you are considered a leader amongst the peers here, and Oracle is highlighted as the leader amongst the leaders. It has been that way on this chart, well, frankly, I think since these Magic Quadrants began being produced, ever since I can remember. And this is one and the same as NetSuite Planning and Budgeting. So again, it has a commanding market position. We'll talk real briefly about an example customer here. The Edgewood companies, really interesting. They were founded as a cattle ranch in the late 1800s on the shores of Lake Tahoe. A beautiful setting, as you can kind of see here in the picture. But then more recently, in 1968, they opened a world-class golf course, and in fact are hosting the American Century Celebrity Golf Championship each July. Then about 2017, they opened a 154 lodge resort, which very quickly, just in 2019 here, was named the #1 resort in the US and Canada. So before, they were moving their actuals into Excel and forecasting the remainder of the year and out years, just like perhaps the rest of you. They were hand building spreadsheets each cycle and stuck in the challenge that we've already highlighted. when they went looking for a new application, one of their biggest goals was to speed up and ease the frequent forecasting that was really key for them, especially when you consider the seasonality that a mountain resorts can experience, you know, winter versus summer. And of course, they have skiing and such in the winter and golf and lake activities in the summer. And the weather can change and really drive what occupancy and staffing models may look like. So they needed something flexible enough to model the rapidly changing conditions that the weather alone brings to them. And they also wanted a more interactive planning process and incorporate analytics into their management reviews. And so this is why they chose planning and budgeting. One of the benefits that they've realized is having real-time data on key KPIs for the hospitality industry is an outcome of bringing NetSuite Planning and Budgeting into their environment. So things like occupancy rates, guest counts, and staffing levels needed to maintain the services and experience that their customers expect. And then also to, at the same time, manage the cost of sales they need to achieve the financial performance that their investors are seeking. So more can be learned about them on our website. We have a page you can read about them and several other customers. We even have another previous webinar that was recorded with the Chief Financial Officer, Aaron Hartwig, speaking about some of their experiences here. You'll be getting a copy of this material, by the way, after the webinar today. Okay, so that's a look at how some of our customers and the analysts are viewing us here. What I'd like to do now is turn to a demonstration of planning and budgeting. Okay, what we are all seeing on the screen right now is a web browser in which I'm logged into NetSuite Planning and Budgeting's homepage here. Just to give you kind of a quick tour or to show you what this consists of here, you'll see that there are many brightly colored clusters of icons that guide a user towards the process that they may wish to be performing that day. So for example, forecast is, if I open it up, allows me to access my revenue and cost of goods planning or my operating expense or working capital planning. If I go into the financials process, we can see I've got all of my financial statements here available to me, and we'll come into those a little bit later and show you how these are. I've also got things like dashboards at a high level that show me the key performance indicators that I may want to see. So you'll notice here as well that we are in a fairly busy screen. I've got some 9 icons. I've also got some communications messaging coming out to me as a user about what our goals are this year and so on here. I'm obviously logged in as somebody who's got kind of administrator privileges, so I can show you all the functionality. But if you are really a contributor, you may have a simple interface that shows you just 2 icons, such as forecast and financials. In other words, making obvious what you need to do. Similarly, the infolets, or sort of mini dashboards, analytic objects that you can see right here can be personalized as a mashup to you as an individual. So you can see here we've got a range of financial performance metrics that we're looking at here. And these are interactive. So for example, I'm looking at my monthly sales trend. If I want to, I can click on it, and this allows me to compare current year to prior year, or perhaps click again and see the components that actually make up the current year and prior year revenue, gross profit, cost of goods categories there. So again, this information is real time. Your actuals will be brought over. And just to be clarified, you probably won't be bringing your actuals in on a real-time basis, but you can bring them in near real-time, daily, have customers who even do it hourly during month-end close. And then, of course, your budgets or forecast information, which is created here and stored here, is available and presented via the reporting or dashboards on a real-time basis here. Okay, so let's go into our financial statements just to start off and kind of give you an introduction. If we open up our income statement, you'll see that what we're looking at is we're being presented with a grid or Excel-like view of our financial statements. Going down the rows, we have detailed accounts. These align with the general ledger source accounts for our NetSuite customers. These will be automatically updated. The metadata, if you will, drives the dimensions, the account dimension here, so that if you add new accounts, you'll see them here automatically. Okay, and then two, the actuals that are brought over, you can see that we have in this demo example 7 months through July of actuals, and then we are forecasting out for the remainder of the fiscal year as well as a future fiscal year, and that's the forecast we're showing in our income statement here. You'll also notice standard in these forms is we have what's called a point of view section here in the upper left. This allows me to confirm what, in this case, currency and subsidiary I'm reporting. So for this can be anything that is relevant to the entire page of data that you're viewing, and it allows you to change this. We'll show you more on that in a moment here. In terms of other views, that same income statement data can be presented as a dashboard. So this is the same data we were just looking at in the grid view, but now it is in a more visually consumable dashboard that allows me to see the trends data that I'm looking at here. In this case, my gross profit by month, some key performance indicators here. If I want to, I can change the view slightly. If I want to, for example, maximize this one piece to focus on it, or perhaps change this from a line graph to, maybe I'm interested in looking at a column graph. Okay, we can change this view quickly here on the fly. And this information can be accessed not just from your web browser, but also from like an iPad or tablet device, any other device like that that you want to see. And these are easily created by just simply dragging objects from a palette into a design environment here. There's no coding or anything with this here. Okay, so that's a dashboard. We'll see some more of those as we move further on. We also have what I'll call pixel perfect output reporting. So in this case here, we're looking at our income statement, again, the same data, but here we have a report that is available in HTML, or we can put it out to PDF. You can see we've got header information, run dates, I can put logos in here, and then I've got all my detail information. I can emphasize things like subtotals with banding, bold, so on. I can even run these reports as books of reports with tables of contents automatically produced, and I can schedule these and run them and have them burst and email out to recipients automatically. So let's say every Monday morning I want to have all of my managers get a departmental expense actual versus budget report for the month to date. That's quite feasible to do here. Okay, so again, just different versions of outputs that are available to me. You'll see that we've also got our balance sheet and income statement here as well. So if I move over, we can see the balance sheet shows us a similar view, both in terms of a grid style report with monthly running balances, okay, and then also the formal output here that is, the HTML output, again, like you would expect to see. And these do allow me, these dimensions can be rolled up in multiple ways. In other words, if I need to be able to support different reporting formats and requirements, I can do this here without creating separate versions of the data or jeopardizing the integrity of it here. Okay, the same thing with cash flow. Our standard reporting uses the indirect method here, but is focused on the monthly movement in all of your accounts. And of course, you can support multiple currencies in this, just to go a little bit earlier there, or what I meant to show earlier is I can output this in multiple currencies, or I can have, multiple input currencies or multiple output currencies. And then the subsidiaries and such can be changed just that quickly. So the flows or the forms really support anything that I want to include. So that's the output, the reporting side here. We'll get into a little more ad hoc reporting later here, but I want to focus on the input side of our planning process. And we'll start here in a basic input form. You see this looks kind of similar to the first income statement we looked at. It's designed purposely to look like a spreadsheet grid. Again, you'll notice that we have several columns that are gray. This tells us that these are actuals coming in from the general ledger, and they're locked because the actuals are, well, they're actuals here. The white cells, on the other hand, are white, and this indicates they're open to me to make edits or changes if I want to here in my forecast. So in this case, we can seed this information from prior months or from the budget, and then I can be free to come in and, for example, in this scenario, we're beginning August, we have July closed, and I'm now reforecasting the remainder of the year as well as putting forecasts in for the next fiscal year that's going to happen. So in this case, we'll focus on the point of view selection again. Again, you see the subsidiary, the currency. In this case, we are focusing on a particular customer or customer category, and again, other financial segments. We've got our products or services listed down the side, and you can see in this case, there are things like MacBooks and iPads and so on here. And then the planning process is just really as simple as inputting numbers. So I might, for example, type in 10K, and that signifies $10,000, okay, that are being planned. I can take this, drag it forward just like a spreadsheet. When it does, you can see it spreads to 10,000 across the remaining month. Notice that the year total, though, is reflecting not only the amount I'm forecasting, but also the actuals that have been incurred here, because obviously that's going to be the total year forecast value. So this is automatically maintained in there. Okay, I have lots of functionality available to me. You'll see that if I right click, I can do things like add comments or supporting detail here. I can show my change history. In other words, full audit trail. I can even attach documents here. So for example, if we want to see a comment, okay, this is a comment that's entered, logged by user, time and date here. I can have running dialogues in this. If on this particular cell, notice it's kind of a green color, I can also add my supporting detail if I want to have information sort of below the cell level. So in this case, I'm looking at some kind of an activity times the revenue for each of those activities. And this is my basis for my $50,000 forecast that you see there. So those are direct input methods, but we take it further than that. One of the things we allow you to do is to use your historical or your trended data for doing your planning. So notice that under this column here, I've got manual as a method selected for the first two rows. But if I look at this particular row and open up this smart list, you'll see that we are now looking at the ability to select several different trending methods by month, or I can even use my prior year actuals to do my planning by it. So if I just go ahead and let's accept this as is with the 12-month rolling method here, I can here put in, for example, an uplift. If I think that I want to see the current trend, but I want to see a 10% uplift, what you'll see when I press save is that these values will all adjust upwards by 10% over the prior period upon which they're based. Now you notice some of these cells are yellow. This tells me I've not committed these to the database yet. If I click the save button, it will write them up to the cloud database and bring back these values as white cells. Notice these went up slightly here. Okay, so just some of the planning capabilities I've gotten. But unlike a spreadsheet here in this form, it's only presenting the data. The data, again, is stored in a multidimensional database and can be presented any way I want to, again, from the original or single point value that is important, essential for the integrity of the data. So if we want to pivot this view, instead of looking at it by customer, we're now looking at it by product. In this case, you can see our point of view has now changed to include a particular item and then all of the customers who have either purchased the item in the past or have been forecast this year to be buying this. So you see here's the same $10,000 a month that we forecast for Abbott for the iPad Pro here. That same values came down right there for me. The same information, okay, but unlike your spreadsheet where it would be two different versions of data that you would have to keep synchronized, it is maintained for you here. This is a good place to show you another function that I had alluded to in my initial presentation, and that is the predictive planning capability. If I select this off my right-click menu, what it's going to do is it is going to pick from any number of predictive models, statistical models that it has here, and then let me make one small adjustment. I'm going to just change the planning window to something that fits better in the data that we have got here. Hang on. Okay, so when I do this and click apply, you'll see that the future window will expand here. There we go. And so our line represents our time now of July, but then the planning going forward here. The red line is the values as entered currently in our forecast here. And the blue line with these sort of tan limits around it represent the forecast and represent the forecast as calculated by the statistical engine. So if we expand this, what you'll see here is that I've actually got some details around the prediction that was made here. The method that was used, we can see that a particular method had a best fit here, and the accuracy with which it is delivering that prediction here. And then we are seeing its result here in terms of growth, predicting about a 12% growth rate, which compares to our forecast, which is about 3%, right? So in this case, I may know there's a reason why the product's sales are going to be less than this in the coming year here, but maybe I don't, okay? And I want to adjust this. What I can do is I can grab this whole line and drag it up. When I do, what you'll see is all my forecast entries will proportionately change upwards, all right? And now our growth rate has increased here, and we can see that our sort of risk in the prediction or our forecast has reduced to a pleasant green level here. All right, so just some of the functionality that's available here. Take it just a step further, and we'll kind of wrap up on this. If I really just want to use that prediction, you know, the historical trend I think knows is more accurate than anything I can add to this here. I can copy that prediction into my forecast either for the entire range or just for a range of periods. When I do, that red line moves right on top of the blue line. I can save this and go on. And what I've done is really reduce the planning time that this is requiring here. Okay, so again, this type of capability is something that really is representative of sort of the maturity of the product and the sophistication of it here. Okay, what I'd like to do right now is I'm going to touch on OpEx briefly just to show you the form here. Actually, I'll go, and this is really a summary report view. The input here I have got available to me by expense account level here. Again, we've got all the planning functional tools available to us. Notice that I can select my department here. Not only can I as the administrator pick any department that I want, but more importantly, the users themselves are controlled by security so that there's no risk of them inadvertently seeing data from other departments that perhaps they shouldn't. The most notable thing, of course, is your sensitive salary and wage information that you may have at the department level and so on here. So all of this works the same way that you have available to you there. What I'll point out here too is that we also provide a lot of what-if modeling capability. So in this case, working capital, of course, is always a key area there where what can you do to maintain, preserve, and lower the cost of your working capital. And so what you'll see right here is a scenario where I can input a change against assumptions from our working capital. So in this case, we've got our total sales brought forward from the forecast here, the amount that we're going to be selling on credit and for our trade receivables, and then the day sales outstanding that we expect here. All right, when that calculates, it will result in the monthly movements, the cash flow entry for that account, as well as the trade receivables that move forward to the balance sheet. If I want to change this, let's say we can get this, take 10 days out of this here process, I just simply save this, and this will then make appropriate changes to the movements and the balance sheet accounts, the cash flow and the balance sheet accounts, and carry those forward to those financial statements that we were looking at. You can do this in your primary version. You can create what-if versions or best case, worst case versions, and so on here, and allow you to maintain all of those models as you're moving forward here. Okay, so let me do this here as just kind of a wrap up on the demonstration itself. What I'm going to do actually is go back up to my home screen, and then I'm going to move out to Smart View. In other words, I'll be moving to Excel, and this is the way you can work with Microsoft Office. If I open up my income statement here and go back to this particular view. Notice one of the choices off my action menu is to open this report in SmartView. This sends any report or form in the application out to Excel through this SmartView link. So let's have a look at what this is. Right here, I've moved into Excel. This is just ordinary Excel, in this case Office 365 like you might have, but I've got a special planning ribbon here that allows me to interact with the database live here. I've got a panel open that is my SmartView panel. This is just to show you the connection that is being maintained by SmartView to my planning and budgeting model in the cloud. All right, we won't really do much of this, so I'm just going to close this here. But notice that I've got not only a point of view that shows me where I'm at in terms of the other dimensions such as total products, all departments, and so on, but I've got just a starting point here in my grid that if I click the refresh button up here is going to pull back the current net income value for, in this case, the month of June for our current fiscal year. Okay, so what we are looking at this point is basically a single value that's been pulled back, refreshed to the latest actual as it is in the model. But if I want to, I can begin to interact with this information. So for example, if I want to expand this out, see what the net income driver values are, and break this into a kind of a summary income statement, I can just simply double click. And when I do, this drills down to my ordinary and other income. Double click again, I've got my gross profit, total expense. Double click again, we can see income, cost of sales. Double click on total expense. Okay, so now I've got a very simple income statement here that we're looking at. Now we're looking at current year actuals. Again, just to show you basic Excel functionality, I can take this and I can copy this into the next column over. And let's say we want to compare the current year's actuals to the prior year actuals. All right, all I have to do is just simply edit this to fiscal year 17, refresh. And when I do, we're going to see it is now brought in the fiscal 17 data alongside the fiscal 18 data. I can still use any Excel functionality that I like. So if I want to create a variance formula, okay, we can do this. And we'll just expand out the cell. So now, you know, we've got our own Excel formula in here. All right, something you probably would do. We'll type in a header for, you know, variance. Again, when I click refresh, the formula persists. All right, it's not corrupted or blown away. But notice too, when I click on any of these values, they're just numbers. All right, there's no macros or formulas. There's, you know, JUN, June, income, etc. Just labels. It knows how to read those. So let's take this a step further and let's maybe add to this income statement. I'm going to go ahead and again just use, you know, copy and paste here again. And if we want to go ahead, we'll change this to budget. And then what I'm going to do, actually, should have copied all of this over. And now I'm going to change this to act versus budget. All right. I happen to know that what that's going to do is bring up a formula that is created and stored in the database and will bring up the variance. So when I click refresh again, you can probably guess what's going to happen. We're now looking at the budget for the month of June and the variance for the month of June. All right, this is all displayed here in the spreadsheet just as quick as we can type the data in. If I want to see the total year to date, again, we can bring this forward and let's go ahead and we'll type this in. We'll type in actual. And I'm going to make one little change to my month of June here. I'm going to, it's got time intelligence. And so in other words, if I type in year to date and we copy this over, all right, and I click refresh, what it's going to do is bring in the year to date numbers, in this case through June. All right, so we can continue on with this. So for example, if I want to show the forecast for the total year or things of that nature, I can just simply keep cutting and pasting this. Just like that, I've really been able to create a actual or income statement that compares year over year, budget versus actual. I could bring in forecasts and so on there, all from this database just as quickly as I can think or ask the questions here. Last thing I'll show you real quickly here is the ability to do some analysis. So in this case, I've got some information preset here that's looking at my gross profits, and maybe I want to understand products and customers that are bringing us the greatest profit contribution to the organization. So let's go ahead and let's just focus on the year to date. I'm going to click the year to date June, and I'm going to keep only. And now when I do, what I'm going to do is bring in my total items here, or total products. So if I drag this down, okay, I can actually drag this dimension down off the toolbar. And when I do, you can see it lists all the items. You recognize some of these from before, the iPad Pro and Brocade Switch, etc. Now we're looking at all of our contribution by item. Now, if I want to, I can take this and pivot the column headers or the row headers over here to the column. Okay, so now I'm looking at my information by item broken out across columns. Now I can go ahead and use Excel if I like to sort any of this information. So let's just go ahead and we'll go to just data and click a descending sort. And what this is going to do is, of course, sort out, did this very quickly, but it's going to sort out our top performing products. Maybe we're interested in this particular MacBook that seems to be generating the greatest gross profit for us here. Let's go back to our planning menu. We'll click keep only. And now if I want to, we can bring in the customers and do the same thing here. Okay, I can bring back and show all of the customers that are buying the products. Kind of pre-formatted sheets. So in this case, we're looking at kind of a similar view. All I do is refresh it every month, shows my top 10 customers. Okay, or actually in this case, it's showing all my customers, but now again, I can use Excel, because I know how to use Excel, and filter this down to my top 10 customers. And just like that, I've got a pie chart showing the gross profit contribution of my top 10 customers for the current month of July. All right, so again, I could go on and on with this. I want to pause here. I know we have a couple questions to go through here, and turn this over to you guys here and see what we can answer in terms of questions. So, Alejandro, do we have any?
Perfect. Thank you, Derek. Yes, we have some questions that came in before. I'll go over them. I also have a quick polling question from the that we want to ask our participants. So I'll pull that up right now, and in the meantime, I'll start reading some of the questions that we received. We don't have any live questions yet. So the first question that we have is, and I think you've answered this already, Derek, but just for you to expand, is do we have to add an add-on product to get meaningful reporting?
Hopefully what we showed you in terms of report output with both the built-in reporting as well as the Smart View capability answers that question.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
Yeah, exactly. So there's another question about what did you see? What is the budgeting tool? And it is, you showed that, I think that's clear. And then how much does it cost? I think we can address that costing a question of line, and we can reach out to the participant who submitted a question and get more information from them about this so that we can give them the right pricing. But
yeah, the only comment I would make on price is that when you compare it to the amount of time that even a small finance team is spending today in manual reporting, these typically pay for themselves in just a few months. And never mind the added benefit of the security and confidence in the data that I mentioned earlier. But the ROI is typically very easy on this type of solution.
Right. The next question is, does the system distinguish between a budget and a forecast? Is there a capability to do a baseline budget that doesn't change? And then what out-of-the-box reports is out with, sorry.
Yes. So just to address the question is absolutely, it can maintain as many different versions of budgets, including a locked baseline, as well as forecasts as you want to. And yes, it does distinguish between those. And then as far as reporting, I showed you some of the formal reports. There are also many informal reports, variance analysis reports, showed you some of the dashboards, the visual reports, and you are free to, as a a user and customer, to create reports as you want and are as needed.
Okay. There's a very specific question, strengths, weaknesses compared to adaptive.
Strengths and weaknesses compared to adaptive. Well, having spent a few years at adaptive, I suppose I can answer that question.
Yeah.
Really, there's a couple of things that I would point out just in this context here. One is, frankly, that Smart View capability I showed is just really exceptional. It's what most people who use this say they like best. I know that Adaptive has their own Excel interface. It is basically a static reporting interface. I'm not capable of doing any of the things that you saw me just doing, and I didn't even begin to really get deep down into what Smart View can do. The other thing that I would say is Adaptive is really built around corporate reporting. In other words, it's designed to allow you to plan against your GL accounts by department, but has a hard time if you want to plan and budget against things like your customers or products, which you saw me doing right up front in this. That's where the benefits of having the multidimensional engine, S-Space, come into play. It is able to address as many different business dimensions as you could possibly want in your data. For example, for our NetSuite customers, it comes pre-configured with the 12 or 13 dimensions that align with the segments that you already have. Things like item, relationship, location, okay, that customers of NetSuite already benefit from and enjoy are built into this. You can't do that with Adaptive.
Perfect, thank you. And the last question that we have is, and it's probably very specific, so answer if you can, is how do your clients solve the problem of getting clean monthly data, given that some expenses are recorded outside, for example, an AP module? And this is from a user that the answer about what planning that they use today was very interesting. An intricate web of sheets.
Okay.
So
yeah.
I wanted to. I like that answer. An intricate web of sheets. So
yes, that creates a
the
good
answer
visual.
is very specific too,
doesn't it? Right. So the answer to that question is simply that a planning system does not exist alone. It has to play nicely with others. Classically, your general ledger, of course, is always your core source of your actuals data, but things like your HRM or HCM, human capital system, your payroll system, in other words, source of all of your labor information. And then also things like a CRM, maybe the source of your sales forecast for future sales, okay? And then also, other information, statistical data, things like units, square footage, you name it, that are important to planning can be brought into this. Not to mention if you have, let's say, an operating subsidiary that is on a different general ledger and you want to, you're going to be changing, so it's not worth building an integration to it. You just want to import it as a spreadsheet output of their trial balance each month. This is very adept at bringing that information in. Again, it's built to do that because this is often the case. Had I more time, I would show you how you can even just use Smart View. You have full import capability, but you don't have to use that. You can just simply use your spreadsheets connecting with that Smart View function that I just showed you. It is able to import data, in other words, write it into the database and incorporate it natively on its own. So hopefully that gives you a sense of that.
Thank you, Derek. And that's the last question. So with that, I wanna thank Derek for his great presentation today. And I want to thank also our attendees. Just a quick note, we will not have a session next week, but we'll have a session in 2 weeks. We will be discussing the new release 20.2 sort of our best features, our top 10 features of the new release. So please tune in for that.